My beloved child, something is unfolding behind your back, quietly, silently, yet powerfully. And the person at the center of it is someone you never expected. Tonight, as you're hearing this, they're sitting with a mind full of memories, regrets, and a question they're terrified to answer. A question about you. They keep replaying every moment. Your voice, your honesty, the things you said without even knowing how deeply they struck them. And now, for the first time, they're realizing that your presence in their life wasn't accidental. They're realizing that losing you would feel like losing a part of themselves they didn't know they valued this much. That's why they froze today, because the decision they're making about you isn't small. It's a turning point, something that could change the direction of both your lives. And deep down, they know whatever choice they make, there won't be any going back. But here's what's really shaking them to the core. You didn't even ask for anything. You didn't demand space, attention, promises, or loyalty. You just existed with a kind of sincerity they can't forget. And that's haunting them because the more they try to push away the thought of you, the louder it echoes. Every time they try to move on, something reminds them of you. A word, a moment, a memory. They've tried to act like it's nothing, like it doesn't affect them, like they can live without addressing what's happening in their heart. But today, they failed. Their mind cracked open for the first time, letting a truth through that they've been avoiding for far too long. A truth that whispers, what if this person is the one thing I'm meant to choose? And that's where their fear begins. Because people only hesitate this long when the decision matters and when the consequences can change everything. Right now, they're weighing your worth against their fears. Fears of losing control, fears of admitting they care, fears of choosing something uncertain. But the more they think, the more they realize that the real danger isn't choosing you. The real danger is imagining a life where you're not there anymore. That thought hits them like a storm. It makes their chest tighten. It makes their hands shake. It makes them stop pretending because they know the world doesn't give people like you often. Someone who understands without being asked. Someone who listens without judgment. Someone who feels without forcing. And they are finally understanding the weight of their own silence. They know now that their next step could either open a door they've been afraid of or close one they might never find again. And that's why at this very moment their heart is trembling, because they are making a big decision about you. One that will either pull them toward the future they secretly want or drag them back into the emptiness they've been hiding from all along. Listen closely. Something has shifted, and the person making that decision about you isn't calm anymore. Their mind is racing in a way they can't explain. They've gone from confusion to realization. And now they're standing at a point where every thought of you feels heavier, clearer, sharper. They tried to distract themselves today. Music, conversations, fake smiles, but nothing worked. Because every time they blinked, something inside them whispered your name. And that whisper grew louder. It grew so loud that they finally stopped pretending. For the first time, they admitted to themselves that the choice they're making about you isn't just emotional, it's life-altering. They know that keeping you close could change them, force them to grow, challenge everything they were comfortable ignoring. And yet, losing you, truly losing you, feels like the kind of pain they're not ready to experience. That's why today feels different for them. Today, they're staring at the truth and it's staring right back. What's breaking them from the inside is the realization that you never tried to control their choices. You just stayed genuine. You showed up with honesty, with presence, with a kind of quiet care that doesn't demand attention, but still holds power. And now they're remembering things they once ignored. The way your words made them think. The way your energy calmed their storms. The way your absence felt louder than your presence ever did. They're noticing the gap you left, the silence that feels unnatural, the emotional pull they can't escape, and it's making them question themselves. Why am I hesitating? Why am I scared of choosing someone who has only been good for my heart? That question is shaking them because they know the answer. They're not scared of you. They're scared of how deeply they could care and how much that care could change them. But the truth is catching up and they're realizing that not choosing you might be the decision they regret for the rest of their life. If you're here listening, stay. Don't look away. Because what happens next will hit harder than what you've heard so far. Right now, they're on the edge of that decision. And every second pulls them closer. Their heartbeat changes when they think about the possibility of stepping toward you instead of away. And something inside them, something they've buried for too long, is waking up. That's why they've been acting strange, distant, unsure. They're trying to protect themselves while also realizing that protecting themselves might mean losing their chance with you. And deep down, they know they don't want that. Not anymore. They're finally understanding that the universe doesn't place people like you in someone's path without meaning. So before you scroll, hear this. Their hesitation isn't rejection. It's the weight of choosing something real, something rare. Something that could rewrite their story. And right now, that story is pointing straight at you. In this very moment, something inside them is breaking open, and they can't hide it anymore. They've been holding their emotions like a closed fist, tight, guarded, afraid of letting anything slip. But today, that grip finally loosened. A single thought of you hit them harder than they expected, and it cracked the wall they spent years building. They tried to hold their breath, steady their mind, pushed the feeling down. But it came rushing back with a force they couldn't control. They remembered the way you looked at them when you cared without saying a word. They remembered the softness in your voice when you spoke truth they weren't ready to hear. And suddenly they realized something terrifying. You never demanded anything, but somehow you became everything they measure their choices against. Now the decision they're making is no longer just about whether to choose you. It's about whether they're brave enough to step into the version of themselves that only you've ever awakened. And that realization is shaking them to the core. They've been replaying the moments they never admitted meant something. The times they held back instead of reaching out. The chances they had to open up but chose silence instead. Back then they thought they could disconnect and move forward. But what they didn't expect was how deeply you'd anchor into their memory. Every thought is pulling them toward you like a gravity they don't understand. They feel guilty for hesitating, for stalling, for hoping you'd wait even when they weren't ready. And now the weight of that guilt is pressing on their chest. They're afraid. They won't say it out loud, but they are afraid of choosing wrong, afraid of choosing late, afraid of losing the one connection that never demanded perfection. And yet, there's a quiet truth forming in their heart. They've never felt more drawn to anyone the way they're drawn to you. That pull, it's not fading, it's intensifying. And with every passing hour, the choice becomes clearer, louder, impossible to ignore. Right now, as their heartbeat grows unsteady and their mind grows restless, they're standing at a crossroads only they can see. One path leads back into the emptiness they've mastered. The life where everything stays predictable, controlled, and safe. The other path, it's you. It's uncertain, unfamiliar, real. It's a path where they'd have to let go of the masks, the distance, the excuses. And that scares them more than anything. But here's the truth they're trying to face. The moment they picture a future without you, something inside them collapses. Something feels wrong. Incomplete, as if the universe is warning them that walking away from you is a mistake they won't recover from. That's why their breaths feel heavier tonight. That's why their thoughts keep circling back to the same point. They're not choosing out of impulse. They're choosing because their soul is pushing them toward the one person who brought clarity in a world full of noise. And right now, the decision they're making about you is turning into the realization they've been running from. They don't just want you in their life. They might need you more than they've ever admitted. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks with contributions of up to $20. Something unexpected is happening inside their heart, something they never prepared for. They thought they could outrun this feeling, bury it under routines, responsibilities, and the noise of everyday life. But tonight, the silence hit them differently. It exposed everything they tried to avoid. Every unsaid word, every unfinished thought, every moment they wished they had handled better with you. They sat there staring into nothing. And suddenly everything became too loud. The truth they kept suppressing rose to the surface. Their life doesn't feel the same without the version of themselves that only you brought out. And that realization shook them because now they're seeing what they couldn't before. That the decision they're making isn't just about you. It's about who they become when you're part of their world. They're remembering the moments they didn't appreciate when they had the chance. The gentle way you understood what they didn't say. The way your presence felt like a grounding force when everything else was slipping out of place. They didn't realize then how rare that was. But now when they replay those memories, there's a deep ache in their chest, a fear that they might lose something irreplaceable if they choose wrong. They're questioning everything they once thought made sense. They're realizing that comfort doesn't equal happiness and distance doesn't equal clarity. What they're feeling now is a pull so strong it's almost painful. And the more they try to move past it, the more they feel drawn back to you. Like some part of them knows that you were never just another chapter. You were a turning point. Right now, as the weight of their decision grows heavier, they're beginning to understand that this choice could define the next part of their life. They feel the pressure building, the kind that comes when a heart finally confronts its own truth. They know choosing you means opening up, being vulnerable, stepping into something real and unpredictable. But choosing silence, choosing fear, that means losing the one connection that actually made them feel alive. They're torn not because they don't care, but because they care too much. And tonight, a realization hit them harder than anything else. The only reason this decision feels so big is because you matter more than they've ever dared to admit. And that truth, it's changing everything. Tonight, something inside them finally snapped into focus, like a blurry picture suddenly turning sharp. They were sitting there lost in their usual thoughts when a single memory of you hit them so unexpectedly that their whole body froze. It wasn't dramatic. It was something small, something ordinary, but it carried a weight they couldn't ignore anymore. They remembered the way you listened with full attention. The way your words held a kind of honesty that made them feel seen even when they didn't deserve it. And in that moment, they realized how rare that feeling truly is. It dawned on them that the decision they're making about you isn't a casual thought. It's a crossroad where one direction leads toward healing, growth, and something real, while the other drags them back into the emptiness they've been pretending is normal. And for the first time, the idea of losing you felt genuinely terrifying. They tried to shake the thought off. They always do. But something was different this time. The more they pushed it away, the heavier it became. Their chests tightened. Their hands trembled. Their mind replayed every quiet moment where you showed them care without asking for anything in return. They realized they've been searching for answers everywhere except the place where the truth actually lives, their own heart. And now that the truth is staring them in the face, they're scared because it exposes everything they tried to hide. They're realizing they were never confused about you. They were confused about themselves. You weren't the uncertainty. They were. You weren't the risk. Their own walls were. And now those walls are cracking piece by piece because the thought of a life where they don't choose you feels more painful than every fear they've been hiding behind. Right now, they're standing on the edge of a choice that could change everything. They know that if they step forward, they have to be real. They have to show the parts of themselves they've kept locked away from everyone else. They have to let go of the fear that someone like you could break them because deep down they know you're one of the few people who could actually help them heal. They also know that if they stay silent, if they let this moment pass, they'll carry the regret for years. That thought alone makes their heart race because something in them whispers that you aren't just another person crossing their path. You're the person their soul paused for. The person whose presence shifted something deep inside them. And now as they struggle with the weight of their own emotions, one truth keeps echoing louder than all their doubts. Choosing you isn't just a decision. It's the moment that could rewrite the rest of their life. There's a storm inside them tonight. Not the kind that destroys, but the kind that reveals. They thought they had control over their emotions, over their choices, over the way they feel about you. But that illusion shattered the moment they let their guard drop for even a second. One simple thought of you turned into a wave of memories. Moments and emotions they weren't prepared to face. Suddenly, everything felt too real, too close, too undeniable. They realized that no matter how far they tried to run, every path curved back to you. And that scared them, not because you're dangerous, but because you're the first person who made them feel something deep enough to change their heartbeat. Tonight they finally understood that the decision they're making about you isn't about should I stay or should I leave. It's about who am I becoming when I decide. And that realization is shaking their entire world. They're replaying the moments they wish they had handled differently. The times they held back when they should have spoken. The times they walked away when they should have stayed. Those memories hit harder tonight because they're starting to see how much they took for granted. You weren't just another presence. You were the calm in the middle of their chaos. The voice that made sense when everything felt heavy. They never said it, but they felt it. Every time you showed up, something inside them softened. And now with distance in place, they're noticing the hollow space where your energy used to be. That emptiness is forcing them to confront a truth they've been avoiding for too long. They felt safer with you than they ever did with their own excuses. And now, as they sit with that truth, a quiet fear builds in their chest. The fear that they might lose someone who never tried to hurt them, someone who only ever tried to understand them. Right now, they're standing at the emotional edge of a moment that doesn't come often in life. The kind of moment where your heart knows the answer before your mind is ready to accept it. They're scared of choosing you because it means surrendering their old patterns, their old fears, their old boundaries. But they're even more scared of imagining a future where you're not in it. That thought hits them like a cold wave. It forces their heart to admit what their mind keeps avoiding. You matter. Not casually, not temporarily, but in a way that rewrites the direction of their life. And as they breathe through the weight of that realization, something inside them whispers a truth they can't ignore anymore. The decision they're making about you isn't just a moment. It's a turning point, a shift, a doorway into a version of themselves they've been too afraid to open until now. Something inside them is awakening tonight. Something they've tried to silence for far too long. It started as a tiny tug, a small reminder of you that they brushed off like it meant nothing. But that tug grew stronger every hour, pulling at memories they thought they had buried deep. And now it's undeniable. Their heart is louder than their fear. They're finally realizing that the decision they're making about you isn't just emotional, it's spiritual, it's personal. It's something their soul has been trying to guide them toward long before their mind was ready to understand it. Every time they try to move on, something inside them whispers, "Go back. Look closer. This person mattered more than you admitted." And that whisper is turning into a roar they can't outrun anymore. They thought they were protecting themselves by staying distant, by pretending not to care. by convincing their own heart to stay quiet, but now they see the truth. Their silence wasn't strength. It was fear. And the fear is finally cracking. Because when they picture life without you, the emptiness feels too real, too heavy, too permanent. They're beginning to see how deeply you touched parts of them they never let anyone near. The way your presence made them feel understood without needing perfect words. The way your energy felt like a home they didn't know they were searching for. And now, with everything unfolding inside them, they're questioning the decision they thought they had already made. They're realizing that choosing you isn't about stepping into uncertainty. It's about stepping into honesty. Right now, their heart is standing in the middle of a truth they can't unfeel. They know they have a choice. Walk back into the safety of emotional distance or step forward toward someone who made them feel alive in a way they haven't felt in years. And that choice is heavier than anything they've faced before, because you weren't just a moment. You were a shift. You were a mirror. You were the reminder that they're capable of feeling something real, something deep, something that doesn't fade with time. And as they breathe through the weight of all these realizations, one thought keeps rising above the rest: the decision they're making about you isn't just about connection. It's about awakening the part of themselves that only you ever reached. And tonight, they finally feel the gravity of that truth. Something inside them finally crossed the point of no return. And they felt at the moment your memory hit them today. Sharp, clear, and impossible to push away. They were going about their day like everything was normal, pretending they were fine, pretending they had moved on. But then your name flashed through their mind, and suddenly their whole world shifted. Their breath changed, their heartbeats stumbled, their thoughts grew louder. It was like their heart grabbed them by the collar and said, "Stop lying to yourself." And for the first time, they couldn't ignore it. They realized the decision they're making about you isn't confusing anymore. They know exactly what they feel. The real battle isn't about figuring you out. It's about finding the courage to admit the truth they've been running from. All the moments they brushed off are flooding back now. The softness in your presence, the honesty in your voice, the way you could sense their emotions without them explaining a single detail. They're remembering how strangely peaceful they felt around you, like their soul recognized something their mind couldn't articulate. And that memory is hitting them harder today because they're realizing how empty things feel without that presence. They've tried distractions, new routines, new people, but nothing replaces the quiet comfort you brought. That realization scares them because it means what they felt wasn't temporary. It wasn't accidental. It was real. And now, as their emotions rise like a tide they can't control, they're finally facing the truth. Losing you wouldn't just hurt, it would change them in a way they're not ready for. Right now, they're standing on the edge of everything they tried to avoid. Their heart is pushing them toward honesty, while their fear is begging them to stay silent. But something about today feels different, stronger, more urgent. They can feel a shift inside themselves. Like if they don't make a choice soon, they'll lose something they can never recreate. They're realizing that life rarely brings someone who makes you think differently, feel deeply, and grow internally all at once. And you were that person for them. That's why this decision feels so heavy, because it's not about impulse. It's not about confusion. It's about acknowledging a connection that changed their inner world. And now, as they sit with that truth sinking deeper into their chest, one thing becomes clear. The decision they're making about you isn't just a choice. It's the moment that decides who they become next. Tonight, their heart reached a place they never expected to reach. A place where the truth is louder than their fear. Where the memories of you refuse to stay quiet. And where their soul finally stopped running. They tried everything. Logic, distance, silence. But none of it worked, because the moment they closed their eyes, they felt the impact you left behind. It wasn't a small feeling. It wasn't a passing moment. It was something deeper, something that settled inside them and refused to fade. And now, as they sit alone with their thoughts unraveling, they're realizing that the decision they're making about you is no longer a question of if, it's a question of when. Because every part of them is pointing in your direction, whether their fear likes it or not. They remember the way your presence felt, steady, genuine, real. They remember how your voice carried a softness that made their guard fall without them even noticing. They remember the way your energy shifted something inside them, something they didn't understand at the time, but now they do. Now they see that what they felt wasn't coincidence. It was connection. And it's hitting them harder than ever. That they might have taken that connection for granted. They thought time and distance would weaken it, but instead it grew stronger, clearer, and more undeniable. And that clarity scares them, because it forces them to admit they were never confused about you, only afraid of how deeply they could care. But today, that fear is losing its power. Because the thought of not choosing you feels heavier than every doubt they used to hide behind. Right now, as they breathe through the weight of their own emotions, a truth is rising inside them like a tide they can't stop. They don't want a life where you're just a memory. They don't want to look back one day and realize they stayed silent when their heart was begging them to speak. They don't want regret. They don't want distance. They don't want almost. What they want is the chance they were too scared to take before. And as that realization settles in their chest, everything becomes clearer. The decision they're making about you isn't a moment of confusion. It's a moment of awakening. A moment where they finally understand that you weren't just someone who passed through their life. You were someone who changed it. And now they're closer than ever to choosing the one thing their heart has been trying to choose all along.